Welcome back. In the last video, I spoke about data visualization. I motivated the topic of data visualization, talking to you about how you can use visualizations to effectively communicate research results. You can simplify stories and tell them effectively so as to motivate action of stakeholders. In this session, we'll go into examining how to do this. We'll use software to enable these visualizations. Software as such can be categorized into two categories, menu-based and code-based. Amongst the menu-based options, the software in the market include Power BI, Tableau, SAS has a product that does the same thing, and of course there's Excel. Tableau is in my view, the best amongst the menu-driven software for making visualizations. It also has the biggest user base and wide adoption, and has an open source culture to its software, with people making contributions to Tableau Public and growing usage and popularity of the software. In addition, Tableau has always been generous to students, offering them free licenses for as long as a year. Of course, this doesn't mean that Tableau is the best and the best of best. I do believe that code-based software based out of R packages like ggplot2 and those out of Python and JavaScript are far better. But of course, with that flexibility and power comes the coding overhead. Tableau doesn't have that, which makes it a great choice for this session. That being said, let's take a look at Tableau then. Now, Tableau comes in many flavors. There's, of course, the most widely known form of Tableau called Tableau Desktop. But before we talk about Tableau Desktop, let me pay tribute to Tableau Public, the free version of Tableau. This can be used and downloaded by anybody. As with all things free, there's always a catch. Files saved on Tableau can only be saved to the cloud, not locally, which means if your visualization contains confidential data, it is out there for anybody in the world to view. It also has a limitation of being able to only access certain limited data types. Tableau Desktop is the full-blown version of Tableau, able to do everything that Tableau can do. Tableau Reader is only for people who want to read or visualize or view visualizations of somebody else. Tableau has two enterprise versions, Tableau Online and Tableau Server. They differ in that Tableau Online is the version where Tableau hosts the server, and Tableau Server is the one where the client hosts the server. Tableau Server is by far the most flexible, most powerful version of Tableau, while Tableau Online is a much cheaper enterprise version for Tableau. That said, if you work for a company, you might use either Tableau Server or Tableau Online. The experience of using these two versions is the same as that of Tableau Desktop. So whether you use Tableau Desktop, which we're going to be using here, Online or Server, their experience is indistinguishable. Let's take a look at what Tableau looks like now. What you're looking at right now is Tableau's start page. This is a place where you arrive when you fire up Tableau. So let me do the same thing. And if you'd like to follow along with me, which I highly recommend, you can do that. You can do the same. Here is my version, my app installation of Tableau. Now, in this view, in the left is a blue ribbon, which includes various kinds of files that Tableau can connect to. And in the middle is this big open space where you might include, which might contain your recently opened files. The menu options file data server, I hardly ever use. The only one that might be useful is the help menu. Not so much for help, but for choosing a language. If your language is not English and you want to move to English or some other language, that's an option available to you. If you have a trial version of Tableau and you want to install your product key, you click on Manage Product Keys to enter your product key, which will give you time beyond the 2-week trial period that Tableau Public comes with. On the right are a bunch of videos for learning more about Tableau. Okay, now here's a very important button in Tableau. It's the Tableau icon. In the top left-hand corner, is the icon, which is there in every sheet in Tableau. So if you ever find yourself lost, you want to come back to the start page, look for that Tableau icon and click on that. Let's go ahead and get started here. Now, with Tableau, you can open various files that are of various formats. In fact, I cannot think of any file that Tableau cannot open. However, we're going to begin here with some sample data that Tableau comes with. This is called the sample superstore dataset. If I go to the left and click on sample superstore, it will fire up the sample superstore dataset. There you have it. Now we are in a worksheet view of Tableau. Before we do this, let's go one step back to the data source view. I'm going to click on the tab in the bottom left-hand corner, which looks like a big disk pile, the commonly seen logo for data, or database rather. Now under data source, I'm going to make this a little bigger, get more view in here. The top part of the pane shows you the fact that we have here 3 tables that have been connected together. The tables are order, people, and returns. A little below this is the section of has a variable description and raw data. I'm going to minimize the variable description so we only see the raw data. Now here you can see all the variables in our data. The sales sample superstore dataset includes transactions by an office equipment store over a span of 4 years. It includes items like order ID, date, ship date, shipping mode, name of the customer, the segment the customer belongs to, the region they're from, their city, state, zip code. It also includes information about the product that was purchased and the transaction amount, sales, quantity, discount, profit. Now, on top of each one of these variables, you'll notice an icon. This is a very valuable icon. If you click on that, you'll see that that sales have been treated as being a number decimal type. Tableau typically will automatically parse your data to figure out what data type it is. You can, of course, also manually overwrite this. ABC would indicate it is a string variable, and so on. So by looking at your data, Tableau has already made assumptions about what format the data is. This is very useful. For example, country region here has a globe in front of it, which means that country region is identified as a geographic variable. Geographic variables have coordinates, longitudes, and latitudes. As soon as Tableau identifies a variable as being geographic, it automatically brings in shaped files, which include longitudes and latitudes that define the outline of that geographical area. Okay, so that's a lot about the structure that we are of Tableau. Let me click on sheet 1. On doing so, we can now see our data on the left. Specifically, you can see the list of variables on the left. By default, Tableau uses tables to organize our data. Tables are orders, people, returns. I don't find this useful, so I'm going to go to this caret on top and say group by folder. And that shows me just the variables. It doesn't show me the source of the variables, which is really what I want to look at. On the top left-hand corner is an icon indicating the active dataset is sample superstore. In fact, it's the only one active right now. But bear in mind, you could have multiple datasets active within your Tableau environment. Now, in the middle is a big white space. Here's where we are going to construct our graphs. Our bar charts, so on, can pop right here. And the way we'll make these bar charts is not the way I'm doing by scribbling on here. Rather, we're going to move variables over from left, like dragging a variable over from here, dropping it somewhere here on the column shelf, and maybe a variable goes from somewhere out here onto the rows shelf. As we drag and drop variables, charts are rendered automatically. Well, not exactly automatically. We can specify various aspects of it once it's been rendered. Now, you might notice your view is a little different from mine because you're showing me, be funny, trying to be. You don't want to show me. Okay, so if you click on show me again, this quick chart menu goes away. And I think of the show me icon as being like training wheels on a bicycle. The more you use show me, the more bad habits you get, the longer it takes you to learn. Training wheels, and in particular, those inflatables that kids use to learn how to swim, are a curse to learning, in my view. I feel it prolongs learning, so your best bet is to rip those training wheels off your bicycle and pop those inflatables so you can learn how to swim and bike faster. With Tableau, make that show me go away, never look there again. Because what it's going to do is breed bad habits, and you won't learn the mechanics of how Tableau works, which will hurt you when the quick charts won't build the chart you're looking for. Okay, so with quick charts, show me out of the way, let's go on and examine our interface. So we have here, organized on the left, variables. Some are categorized into categories and subcategories. For instance, location is a hierarchy. That is, under location, we have country. Countries contain region. Regions contain states, contain cities, contain postal codes. Products contain categories, contain categories contain subcategories, contain manufacturers, contain product names. Okay, that's the organization of variables in the left. Let's look at one more really critical categorization of variables that's happened automatically and almost unnoticeably. Tableau automatically categorizes variables as being either dimensions, these are dimensions, or measures. It no longer tells you these are measures. But let me show you where it's going to tell you, okay? So if I were to don't do this again, because you might do something you don't want to do, so don't try this at home, right? Yet at least. But if I click on profit and try moving it up a little bit, oops, that didn't work, to the border, you'll see that gray line has now become red or orange, and you see dimensions and measures in orange highlighting it. Okay, so you can be convinced then that what I told you is in fact true, that what's below the gray line is a measure and what's above the gray line is a dimension. Okay, dimensions are typically discrete. It's not a strict rule though. Okay, I'd say most of the times dimensions are discrete. I'd say like 90% times. And measures are continuous, again, about 90% of times. You can make one change to the other, and a dimension can become continuous, it's possible. But for the most part, it's good to kind of, at least when you're starting out, just kind of bear in mind, whatever is above the gray line is categorical, it's discrete. What's below the gray line is probably continuous, which means it will probably be a number. Okay, so dimensions and measures. Dimensions can be used to slice your measures up. So you've got a variable like sales you want to compare across, some category. That category is going to be a dimension. But I think I might be getting ahead of myself here. Let me go back to our slide. Okay, so back to the slide we are. It's in the Tableau start page. We've seen the worksheet interface. Now, a little bit about saving files. Tableau saves files as a .twb or .twbx. We're going to, as far as possible, use the Tableau packaged workbook format to save our files, because this is the only format that marries your data to your graphs. It might seem unusual for a software to not do that, but yes, Tableau is designed for big data. So if your data set is, a terabyte, you maybe don't want to ship your file with the data and the graphs in one big file. You're better off just shipping the graph section to somebody as a Tableau workbook. In our session, in all our examples, our data sets are fairly small. By small, I mean anything smaller than 200 megabytes isn't big enough to justify using a Tableau workbook. So your default should be to always use a Tableau packaged workbook, at least for this class. Now, you could also save your work to Tableau Public. You could also save just your data as either a hyper format or Tableau data extract format. Moving along, there's nice visualization you can entertain yourself with by Hans Rosling. called Health and Wealth of Nations that really inspired many to make some high quality visualizations. And it's a litmus test of the ability of a good software. If you can emulate a Gapminder graph, then the software is worth is decent visualization software. Hans Rosling, of course, unfortunately passed away about two or 3 years ago, but you can look at his work that inspired many great minds. Okay, let's move along to examine some common charts. So the format I'm going to follow here is we'll review a couple of these common charts and then go ahead and construct them and then go on to the next one and so on. Let's begin with the first one on the list, a bar chart. These are, again, going back here, the ones I've listed out here are some of the commonly used graphs. Obviously, there are many, there are hundreds of graphs out there and hundreds of ways of expressing your data. You're not limited to these. But the 80-20 rule applies to graphs also. Most graphs you see out there are built on lines of 20% of the categories of charts. So these are those 20% most frequently used, widely used graphs, and they're particularly germane to looking at marketing research kind of data. So that's why I focus on these. But of course, the world is vast beyond these charts, and you are welcome to explore that domain. Okay, so a bar chart as such is the most widely used graph, period. It is used whenever you want to compare two or more numbers. There are limits, of course, to how many more numbers. If you want to compare 7, 8, 10 numbers, then maybe your bar chart is beginning to look like a Manhattan skyline, which is really hard to tell which building's tall. And so you don't want to go and compare more than, let's say, 4 or 5 things in a bar chart. We're going to get started by constructing a simple bar chart that's going to compare sales by region. We're going to compare sales by region, examining average sales for every single region in our data set. Let's go right over to Tableau and get started. There we are. We have our sample superstore data set ready to go. And we are now going to drag sales over to one of our shelves. Our row and column shelves is where all the action starts. And then it's made even more exciting by the marks card. Let's keep that in mind then. So let's find sales. We have sales identified here. I'm going to click on sales. So with your mouse, you want to left click on your mouse. Now it's handy to use a mouse rather than your trackball or touchpad on a laptop. It's just easier to have a handy external mouse when you're working with Tableau. Sales is dragged over to, we'll put this on column, see what it looks like. Notice what I'm dragging over is sales, but sales being a continuous variable is being rolled up into an aggregation, in this case called sum. Now, right now, I haven't dropped sales yet, so it's just kind of floating in the air. Once I get to the column shelf, I'll drop it right there, and it'll fit right well. And now that it's been dropped in the column shelf, we'll refer to this as a pill. Okay. That's the terminology that Tableau uses to describe variables in a shelf, like the column shelf. We want to slice our data by region, so I'm going to drag region over from the left under location over to rows. Until I get to rows, I won't drop it. Once I'm there, I'll drop it. Now, every single subtlety in Tableau is well thought through. The founders of Tableau are, these data visualization experts at Stanford, and they've thought through these little nuances like the blue and the green, the pill colors. Blue indicates a discrete variable, and the green a continuous variable. So those are kind of valuable indications of whether you're working with a discrete variable or continuous variable. Now, right now we have our data of sales broken down by region. Let's start to organize our data. As such, we've got a pretty good graph out of the box. Let's start to think about how we can make this better. Our sales right now is represented as sum of sales. We're going to make this average by looking for an aggregation other than sum. Sum is the default for continuous variables in Tableau. We're going to make that average. Now our graph looks a little different. We have these bars that are, again, the length has changed because we're looking at average sales now. I'm going to go ahead and now examine the sales for each of these bars. You'll notice as soon as you create bars in Tableau, you get a tooltip that shows up automatically. It's got a smart tooltip to it, which is really handy. Now we have average sales showing up on the horizontal axis. That should probably be in dollars. I'm going to make that to be dollars first. So I'll go here and select format. This will allow me to change the format of that unit for the x-axis to dollars. Under format, I'm going to go over to the left to scale and select from here the option currency, custom. And as soon as you make a choice, notice you don't have to hit an OK button or hit go or run. Tableau just does that change, which means right now I can tell that this is not the change, exactly the change I'm looking for, because I don't want decimal precision out there. It's just noisy. So I'll make that go away by making decimal places down to 0. Clicking out of it, we have our scale ready. I'm going to go ahead and now make sure our axis is set so that the tick marks are further apart. It's looking pretty crowded and noisy with so many tick marks in the bottom. So let's go and say edit axis, and now I'll specify here tick marks should be, let's say, fixed at every 100. That seems too distant. Let's make it 25. And I can see in the background, our tick marks have been reorganized to be every $25. Okay, so let's go on now and make this region thing go away, because I feel like Central, East, Southwest is kind of like obviously a region. We know that. So I'll make that go away by height field labeled for rows. Next, whenever you've got data, you must always think about order and what makes it easier to absorb or learn. The default in Tableau is, as in most cases, alphabetical. So our regions are organized Central, East, South, West because C precedes E in the English alphabet. So we can sort this now, if we wanted to, by going to region and saying we want to sort this by, we want the region sorted. If I click on sort, it's going to ask me, well, how do you want to sort it? Well, I want to sort it by some field. The field I want to use is sales. And I want to go in descending order of sales. So the highest average sales is on top. Notice as I make the changes out here, those are reflected right away in the graph. Next, I'm going to go and look for sheet 1. Okay, sheet 1 is here. Let's see. Let me now rename the sheet to be true to what it's meant to be, sales by region. There we have it. We specify a sales by region out here. Our graph is looking very much like the one on the slide. There's just one more thing to do. Generally speaking, Tableau makes fairly wise choices about color. But if you're a stickler about color, then you want to use color as wisely as possible. Color can draw attention, sometimes unnecessarily so. Blue, that's a kind of a very faded blue we're seeing. It's not very dramatic, not very strong, yet I'd rather go with something more faded, more dialed down color. So I'm going to click on color here under the marks card. This will allow me to pick a color that's maybe some color that's more bland, right? Because I don't want people's attention drawn to the bars too much. I want them to focus on the length of the bars instead. So here's the contrast of sales by region, which we can do. I'm going to call this here bar chart. So when I double click on the sheet name, I can name it whatever I want to, and the sheet name and the title can be different things. By default, if you don't have a sheet title for the chart, the sheet name becomes the title. However, we did edit the title manually, so that's why they're different in our case. All right, so that's how you get started with making a simple bar chart with Tableau. We're going to move along now and go on to a more nuanced graph, one with more to it. So why limit yourself to just one, two variables? Maybe you want to look at more than two variables. You want to look at not just sales by region, but also by region and another variable, segment. Let's see how that can be done. Go right back to Tableau. And just so that I don't reinvent the wheel, I'm going to go and say, I'm going to say duplicate out here. So my next graph now, so I'm not saying duplicate, not copy. This is sort of bizarre thing about Tableau is that duplicate does copy and paste, but when you do copy, it does something very different. So if you want to, repeat a sheet, copy a whole sheet over to say duplicate, and you now get another sheet. The sheets have got to have different names, have got to have unique names. So it's called bar chart 2. I'm going to call this, well, just that bar chart 2. It's a good name. Call it bar chart 2, right? Okay. And we have got the same graph again now as bar chart 2. Now, bar chart 2 is meant to be sales by region and segment. So let's do that. Click OK, apply or OK, either one should be fine. Here's our new graph. But this graph is not true to its name because right now we only have sales by region, not segment. Let's bring segment into the picture. Segment being a dimension has got to be in the top left hand, the top half of the variables under dimensions. So let's look for segment out here. Here it is. I'll drag segment over to the rows shelf. On doing so, we get sort of like a lot of bars. We get a bar for, we get 3 bars for every region, because every region is being divvied up into a segment. This is still average sales. And the beauty about the process is because we copy pasted our sheets or we duplicated our sheets, a lot of the formatting details have been retained. Like, for example, the axis is still $25 tick marks, and they're converted to dollar units. Now, our next step here would be to think about what else would somebody be interested in looking at here. One thing they might be interested in looking at is comparing different segments. With so much gray now, or that dial down color we're looking at right now, it may be hard to tell things apart now. This might be a good time to bring in some color. So let's bring in some color to contrast the different segments. So what I can do here is drag a fresh bill of segment and drop it onto color. When I do this, our segments are going to get colored differently. Take a look. Okay. Now, let me just take this off from here. I'll remove this from marks, now just throw it out somewhere and it's gone. We're back to where we were before. We drop region onto color, see what happens. Now region gets colored with different colors. Take region away. And now let me try and bring segment on again. This time I'll do it a little differently. Okay. I'm going to go back to segment and I'll drag a copy of segment over. To drag a copy of a variable on a Mac, press Command down, or on a Windows machine, press Control down. And with Command or Control press down, you want to drag and drop onto color. Okay. So again, my left thumb is going to go onto Control because I'm using a Windows machine. I'm using a Mac. Press Command. Keep it pressed. Okay. So your left thumb is right now on that Command key or Control key. While it's still pressed down, you drag segment and drop it onto color. I've still not let go of my left thumb. I'm going to drop the segment on here. And now I can let go of my left thumb. That's really tiring. Okay. So now what Tableau has done is given these different colors to different segments, and I can see sort of distinctions more clearly here. Let's make this legend go away because the legend seems redundant. We already know that consumer is, we can tell from the table, the bar chart rows, what the different segments are. So a legend would seem redundant. I'm going to hide that card then. Next, let's go over and get some subtotals in here. It's good to know what our consumer south segment sales is, but we would like to know how much is overall South. Kind of a benchmark to see, well, within South, how do corporate, consumer, and home office, stack up against each other, and how do they compare to the overall average? For that, we'll go to analysis. And from here, we'll look for totals. You add all subtotals, you'll get a subtotal for every single region. There you have it. Next, let's go over to analysis again, totals, and now we'll click on show column grand totals. This is going to give me an overall total for entire data. There we have it. So now we have overall sales, we have sales for every region, and broken out by region and segment. Now, these colors are kind of bright. And, generally speaking, you don't want to distract your audience with bright colors for your graph. So find some way to dial the color down a little bit. Use more kind of easygoing, calmer colors. So click on color. And from here, you can select under edit colors, some other colors to use. Now, when I click on color and edit colors, unlike last time, I'm going to see discrete color options. Specifically, we're seeing colors that are red, green, blue sort of colors, different colors because our variable being expressed is a dimension. If you were expressing a variable that's continuous, we would get shades of green, shades of blue, and so on to choose from. Okay, now I'm going to go, and this is the menu you're looking at of colors is just 10 colors. Clearly, Tableau wouldn't limit you to just 10 colors, right? So it doesn't. That's not true. So you can pick different color palettes. What you're looking at is the automatic color palette. I didn't look at maybe Tableau 20, Colorblind, and Millerstone, so on palettes. Let's go Tableau 20 for now. From here, I'm going to pick some really, faint colors, less loud colors to represent the data. Wondering what to represent this using. Okay. I'm using a slightly different color for brighter color for totals, and everything else is a more bland, mellow kind of color. So here we have our graph. So you can kind of see out here now, we have the distinctions made out by highlighting our by using different colors. It looks almost good. There's one more thing to do here. Our data still is sorted by region, but we would also like it sorted by segment within region. You can notice out here, home office is making a lot of money, but is not is at the bottom of the stack in terms of ordering, because it's all alphabetical order being used. We go back to segment over here and select sort. And now I'll select from here field and choose sales. Okay. And now you can see home office going to the top of the stack here, kind of really truly representing the fact that home office in South has the highest average sales in the entire country. Okay, that's pretty close to what we have in that example, and which means we can now move on to looking at another kind of chart. We're now going to look at another bar chart. This one is going to look at sales and profit by region. Now, this is an innocuous example because you've done bar charts. You might feel like, well, I got this because it's bar charts after all. But this one is a little different from the previous one because you still have three variables: sales, profit, region. Last time you had sales, region, and segment. The difference here is you have two measures and one dimension. From Tableau's organization perspective, this makes a big difference in how you build your graph out. Let's see why that would be different. So going back to Tableau, let's go back here and I'm going to click on a new sheet called bar chart 3. This time I'll use a clean sheet. We'll not use what we had before. Now, It might be tempting here, having done this before, to make a graph like this, and you drag sales over here, profit and sales, and you're hoping to see what's in the example, but you don't get that. Instead, what you get is two different bar charts. What you really want to do, if you want to get sort of like that bar chart with sales and profits side by side for every region, you'll need to do something a little different. The key reason for that is that these two are measures. You got two measures you want to represent in a graph. You cannot use that. You cannot do it the way like this. So I'll take profit and measure and sales out of here. Instead, I'll use a variable that represents the variables profit and sales. The variable that represents profit and sales is the values of all the measures. Right? The values of these measures is a variable called measure values. This is a variable that Tableau creates automatically. You don't tell it to do it, just creates that. And measure names, it creates these automatically. So measure names contains the names of the measures, and measure values, the numbers in those measures. There's measure values and measure names. Let's see how we can use these to create variables. I'll drag measure values onto columns and measure names. Ooh, before I even do that, notice what happened in the little shelf on the left. We have now all the measure values aggregated and represented under measure values. It's okay. So the bar you're seeing is aggregation of all the measures. Not what we want, but we'll figure that out. We'll resolve that in just a bit. Next, I'll drag measure names over to the rows. What you get now is a graph with region and every single measure. We don't want all these measures. We only want two of these measures, this one here and this one. So let's filter the others out. We can filter these out because Tableau is ready to filter already. It automatically moved measure names to filters, anticipating we might want to filter out some variables. So we'll go to the filter and we'll tell Tableau to remove everything and put back profit and sales. Now our graph looks as follows. We have here a graph of sales and profit by region. The name, of course, is not sales and profit by region because the title just took the sheet name. Let's replace that with the name of our sheet, which is sales and profit by region. So we'll call this. Double click on that and make this name sales and profit by region. Let's do a little bit of a few more cosmetic changes out here to clean this up a little bit. Make this region go away because it's obvious. We'll change the scale out here. We'll make sure it is, first of all, set to be average. Right now, it's some profit, some sales. We can change both at the same time to average by going to measure values and picking average. Next, we're going to go and make sure the unit for measure values in the axis is in dollars. We'll just do it up here, actually. We'll go up here to format, and we'll say under measure values, we want the format to be of the axis to be currency, custom, and to be dollars, right? 0 decimals. Next, we'll change the axis to be, let's just do tick marks every 25 or so dollars. Seems like a good number to use. If you've got a different resolution for your computer, a bigger display, maybe you can go to maybe 20 or 15, 10 or something, and the graph may still look pretty good. Okay, it says value in the bottom out here. Maybe you can get rid of that also. So click edit axis. Let's delete this title or value. Make that go away. Okay. At this stage, we have a graph that shows us average profit and sales and by region. We want to now make sure our sales and profit are colored differently. So let's go in and find the appropriate pill to color. So first I'm going to X this format measure values. And next, I can find measure names from the left to color these using, or I can drag a copy measure names from here. So bear in mind, profit, sales, and all these other variables here are names of measures. If you want different colors for profit and sales, we should drag measure names onto color. I'll drag measure names from the left onto color and drop it there. We get the default colors of Tableau, which are blue and gold. I'm going to make this legend go away. I don't think it adds much value. And let's go and dial these, make these colors a bit more, less loud. Go to Tableau 20 and select now from here, maybe a color for profit that's reflective of what profit is. I don't have a good color for profit and sales, but I'm thinking make sales like green or something, some shade of green, profit some shade of purple. Something. Seems gentle enough. And okay. So here we get a graph of our sales shown and profit by region. Okay. Right, so we have now examined 3 different types of bar charts you can construct quite easily by just dragging moving fields around to render a graph. There are times when your data you may want to share your data in a raw form as a classification table, a summary table, a cross tabulation, what have you. And sometimes if the data is simple enough, a table can't hurt. So, and sometimes somehow people believe if the data is in a table, it must be true. People just believe that a number cannot lie for whatever reason. So when they see data in a table format that they can grasp, they assume it's somehow more believable. So whatever the reasons, let's go and try and build out a table here. Similar to what we just constructed using a bar chart. So we'll represent sales and profit by region using a simple table. I'll just put the numbers out there, as simple as that. So our next task is going to be, in a fresh sheet, we'll make a table. So I'll call this table. We're again going to use the same methodology as before. Instead of copy pasting, I'll actually recreate this so you can kind of see how it was done if you missed any of that before. So we had region going on to rows, I believe. It looks like a table right now, right? And let's get measure names onto columns so we kind of see the rendering of what looks like a table. Right now, it's got no measure names, okay. So the next thing I'll do is we want to make a table. Right now, we're looking at a table format, looks kind of table-ish. We want measure values to be not a bar, but a number in this table. So we'll drag measure values onto something not on here, because that'll give us a bar. Oops, how do I undo this? When you want to undo something, hit the back button. Or you can drag measure values off of there, either one. So obviously that would be a bad idea. So let's just restart over. Okay, how about that? So if you want to clear and restart, click clear sheet, it wipes everything clean. Drag region over to rows and measure names over to columns. This part is all good. Now let's drag measure values over to, oh, let me not do that the last time, right? Okay, so measure values should go on to text, which will then express measure values as a number, literally as a number in your Tableau sheet. So you drop this on text. Now you've got a table with lots of numbers. You have a number for every single measure. Clearly, you don't want every single measure to be kept. So, and for whatever reason, this time measure names didn't automatically go into filters. No issue. We'll drag measure names into filter and specify what measures to keep, which ones to drop. As before, I'm going to go and say, only keep sales and profit. Drop everything else. There you have it. We now have just profit and sales out here. However, they are in sum format. Let's make that to be average format by going out here and making that average. Next, let me go in and specify this to be in dollars by saying format. We'll make the format to be currency, custom, with no decimals. And you can, of course, always manually expand like in most software. I don't recommend doing this a lot, but if you think it's really not looking good, drag this out a little bit to make the table look a little better. And I'll just get rid of region as last time, as I did last time here. And so we have here region taken away, and we'll rename the title to be sales and profit region. There we have it. So we have here a table showing us sales and profit by region for our 4 regions in our data set. Okay. There you have another way of expressing your data, this time as a table. It's the same data, by the way, just a different story you're telling with it. And this is a good thing to know. I mean, you can tell your story many different ways, like any story there is, and you'll pick the story that seems to resonate the best with your audience. Now, it turns out that some innovation by Excel actually many years ago made big waves. They were able to quite easily create these ways to color your cells, and it's a kind of a really cool idea. You can make it numbers in a sheet pop by coloring them. Right? That'd be great. It's called a heat map. Well, some people call it a heat map. Tableau calls that a highlight table. You know, tomato, tomato. We're going to stick with the heat map terminology here, although bear in mind what we're going to build now is called a highlight table in Tableau. So let's simply copy this table over, duplicate this one, and we'll call this new table a heat map. So heat map is one where these different cells are colored. So these cells here are colored to represent the size of that number. So big number, one color, small number, different color. Okay. So if you want to color these, we basically want to specify that there's color associated with the size of this number. This number is expressed by measure values. So I'm going to take a fresh copy of measure values from the left and drag that and drop that onto color. I haven't dropped it yet, so just pay close attention to right now what's in the marks card. Even before I dropped it, notice under the marks card is a notation that the default mark is, or the automatic mark is T or text. That means by default, whatever I do with the color will be applied to the text. Well, that is the idea, right? And that's what we get. Maybe that's not the idea. Because you think about a heat map. A heat map is not about the numbers being colored, but the cell being colored. Okay. So let's go back and make the cell to be colored differently. I'll click on this automatic link and say, well, I don't want you to color automatically the text. Rather, color the square behind it, or the background. If I select square here, we now have a heat map. Okay, so right now we got a profit and sales sort of heat map created, but there's one small issue here. It's color coded nicely, small numbers, light color, dark numbers, big numbers, dark color, but sales are always bound to be higher than profit. So what we now need to do is distinguish the fact that, profit and sales are different things. So we want the coloring to be unique for each column. We'll go to now measure values, and here we'll say use separate legends. This will enable us to use a different legend for each one of these 2 variables. So use separate legends will now give us a different color legend for profit and different one for sales. The range of colors is the same, so they look really awkward right now. So we'll kind of distinguish these by changing the color palettes for sales and profit to be something different. I'll make profit to be purples, as we had in the table before. The colors, we'll see a purple or something here. Maybe make sales to be greens or something. There we have it. Now we have the same thing, same data as a heat map. I'm going to make the cards go away because they're not adding value. So here's our sales and profit by region as a heat map. Same story, same data, different story. Okay, so going back to our slide now, we have examined so far a couple of different graphs, including excuse me, including the most common bar charts. We've examined a table, a heat map. Let's move on examining some cool, interesting looking charts. The thing about charts is that sometimes they are functional, sometimes they're just aesthetic or cosmetic. There's value for each one of them. We'll begin by looking at a stack bar chart and kind of look at how to make one. And the value, the reason we're discussing a stack chart here is because there is seldom unanimous view on anything in the world, but one thing that all chartologists and all like people who make graphs are unanimous about is that they all are consistent and unanimous in hating pie charts. Okay, and if you think that means because pie charts aren't cool and maybe donut charts, seen those, are cooler, well, they're even worse. Okay, so anyways, I don't want to get into the psychology behind why we have a hard time perceiving pie charts. I'll just tell you this, that we're really bad at perceiving shape angles, right? So slices of a pizza, we're really hard at comparing, and therefore pie charts are not liked for that reason. So stacked bar chart is preferred over pie charts. And so let's take a look at what a stacked bar chart is. So imagine we want to look at part of a whole sort of situation. So how much is the West sales as a percentage of national? You can make a graph like this. It's not a pie chart, but it performs the same role. And comparing the segments of the stacked bar chart is easier than comparing segments of, let's say, of a pie chart. So let's go over here. We're going to be doing a couple of different things to render this graph. We're going to call this here a stacked bar chart in the Sheets menu. We'll go on and create our chart. So we want to express sales as a, we want to look at sales by region. So if I drag sales over to rows, we get a column, okay? But if I really want to get sales as a row, what I need to do is to move it to columns, right? Or back to rows. And so one more thing kind of worth talking about here is that if you don't like the orientation of graph, you want it rotated, horizontally, vertically, you can always do a swap rows and columns. And there you go, right? So when one click, it just rotates stuff over. Or you can just decide, I want to start over. That's fine as well. Now, what we're going to do next is we want to segment this bar by region. So what we want is we want different portions of the bar as being different regions. So I'm going to drag region over to color. What this does is creates 4 sections of sales. Each section is about how much sales that region is worth. In this particular example, we actually want to see the sum of sales. So I'm going to leave that the same, and we'll make that average. But we also want to be able to see here the sales as a percentage of the whole. So I guess we could do mental math out here, figure out 600, whatever, and change 700,000 or so divided by 23,000. What percentage is that red thing west of the total? We're going to make that task easier. What if the scale were a percentage scale instead of being, a dollar scale? Well, to do that, we are going to need what is called a table calculation. Fortunately, this is done with a simple click of a few buttons. We'll go over to sales, and rather than expressing sales in dollar terms, we're going to express sales using a table calculation. This table calculation would be of calculation type percent of total. We'll say percent of total using specific dimensions, region, and that's going to give us a segmented graph that's segmented by percentage. You'll see now we have a percentage axis and it goes to 100%. Okay. Now, given that I know the whole segment is like one big block, I'm going to make this whole line graph, this axis go away. Okay, now we have simply a stack bar chart with slices. Let's make the legend go away too. You're probably wondering now, how in the world do you know what's red, what's blue, I don't know. We're going to add that information on. We're going to use some labels right now to really enhance this graph. First, let's make some space. Let's make this a little wider. I don't want to say fatter, but that works too. Okay, so we have this stack bar chart right now. It's a little wider. You can make it wider even further if you think it's worth doing so. And next, I'm going to drag a copy of region. So remember, press Control or Command down and drag on drop onto label. This is going to give us the regions in the as labels. Let's also get our sales numbers. So let's get the sales as a percentage. So this thing on the column shelf contains the sales as a percentage. So drag a copy of that. So again, Control or Command press down, drag and drop onto label. Now even the percentage shows up down here, which is great. Now let's get the raw sales number also onto label. So I'll drag over to the left, drag copy of sales onto label. We have it all now. We've got the sales in percentage, dollars, and the region. Let's clean this up a little bit. First of all, I want to make sure that the percentages are rounded. So I'll go here to sum sales in the marks card shelf, and I'm going to hit here format. Let's make this to be percentage with no decimals. Next, let me go and now make the sum sales to be in dollars with no decimals. Maybe I'll say in thousands because these numbers are really big and I don't think we need that much precision. Now let's go into label and format that label a little bit so it looks better. Click on text here. We'll say region. We'll make it to be a little larger font size, maybe like 12 or something. And then we can have the sales in dollars. We'll move this in front of the percentage. And we can now say this is, what percent of the total, put that in parentheses. Take a look at what this looks like here in the background as I hit apply. That's what it's going to look like. Now you can kind of think about, well, is that good looking or not? And then decide whether to make further changes. I feel like it looks okay, so I'm going to hit OK at this stage. And one more bit of kind of work you can do here is you can either decide to sort this in descending order, or right now it's in reverse alphabetical order, leave it right here. Let me go and make it actually into sorted by, let's sort this by size. I think it looks better that way. We'll sort this by in descending order of sales. Maybe I should do ascending, right? So the biggest, so here we have it. So that I think looks better now. You kind of see west is 32%, east 30%, center 22%, and south 17%. That's like a nice picture of yourself. So, okay. So here we have a stack bar chart that shows you, parts of a whole, which is kind of like a handy way of examining your data if you want to see part of whole sort of analysis. Right? This is a much better solution to compared to using a pie chart. Let me go right back. I like these colors in this example a lot better than I have on my own chart here. So let me go back and dial down the colors a little bit. Those colors are, too bright. So let's make these a little more gentle. Click on Edit Colors and make those colors to be Tableau 20. Or we can even go to Superficial Stone or something, whatever that is. That looks simple to me, actually. We'll stick with, I guess, the Millerstone. Millerstone looks good too. Millerstone looks like nice colors, eh? Try these colors out too. But let me just not experiment too much here. But Tableau 20 should be fine, I think. we'll go here, tablet 20, we'll specify some colors, maybe like which to be this green color and mix out to be pinkish color, purplish color, and make each to be some yellowish, mustard yellow color. Center will be a slight blue color. So you have okay, so they're kind of more gentle colors. I think it's always better to use in a graph than those colors. All right, so we have a stacked bar chart that's basically comparing sales percent by region. Let me say that out here, sales percent. Okay, so we've gone through here one more graph. Let's move along and examine now another kind of graph. And so this thing we're going to look at next kind of loosely fits in this category of parts of a whole. It's really one of those graphs that that you see in magazine covers. And so let me kind of motivate this topic a little bit. Here's an example I'm going to get at right now. There are times when you want to use a graph as, eye candy for people to feel through your report. So, what are you going to put on the cover page of your thick, paper-bound, fancy-looking report? It's 100 pages, and what are you going to do? Motivate people to open the binder of your report. This is the kind of thing that draws them in. This is the kind of thing you see on a magazine cover that makes people peel the pages and look into what the article is all about. So sometimes you want to use graphs, not so much for the story they're telling, but just for the magnetic effect they have on attention. I see that because in this graph, we have a couple of circles denoting the sales of different states. It is extremely hard for the human eye to compare or visually compare these different circles. Right? And if you don't believe me, just think about looking at pizza pies and trying to figure out which one is bigger. So we're awful at comparing pizza sizes and knowing if a large pizza in one restaurant is large enough for us or is not enough for us. Just really, really hard to do that sort of comparison for us. So human eye is awful at comparing these shapes like circles and polygons and so on. So, and for that reason, not a great graph, but let's go and build this, see what kind of eye candy we can build for our viewers should we want to do that. So I'll call this here a bubble chart. I'll create this thing out. So the bubble chart is going to look as follows. We're going to go into our variables of interest state here. We want to express sales using by different states. So I'll drag sales onto size, and what that's going to do is give me a little square. I got one little square here, and now I'm going to make sure that square is really a circle. So I'll say automatic not square, make that a circle. There you go. So right now I've got this one bubble here identifying sales as a circle. I want to have a bubble for every state, so I'll drag state onto detail. I haven't dragged state onto color because I don't want not even a rainbow. I don't want to see 50 colors on my graph. That's just an awful graph. A little off topic here. You generally speaking don't want to have too many colors. So 2, 3 colors, 4 colors is probably tops you want to go in any graph. Anything beyond that is too colorful for to be interpretable or useful. So here we have it. I dropped state onto detail, and right away we got this big these different bubbles, each bubble representing a state. We also got country to come along with us because state is part of a hierarchy. Country is above state, so I'll take country out of here right now because we don't really care about it. This is all US data, we know that, so I'll take country out. I'm going to go back in here, and now let's color our circles by profit, so that we can depict again which of these states are profitable. So I'll drag profit over to color. We get the default blue gold colors of Tableau. We'll change that to a red-green palette because red-green is typically associated with profit and loss. So red, green, white would be nice. I'll go with this and apply that. Here we have it. We have our circles now kind of depicted as being big bubbles, green, red, so on. I'll make the legend go away, and we'll also add some labels on here to our circles. I'll drag state onto label, sales onto label, and profit onto label. And bear in mind, I did that kind of quickly, and every time I did that, I was also moving over a copy of the variable. And if ever you miss a step, you can always hit the back button to go back a few steps to see, what would have happened if you had not done that, or how can you undo your work. And of course, you can redo by hitting the front forward arrow. So here's what we have then by way of our graph. We're now going to fix the labels a little bit. Let me make sure the labels for sales are in dollars. So I'll format that to be dollars. Currency custom, and that's dollars. And we can also say out here, our profit should also be in dollars. Let's say here, currency custom. And if it's a negative value, parentheses is a good way to show that. So let that be the way it is. Maybe I should just go and say here, make it even easier to kind of learn. You should use thousands or K instead of using absolute numbers. So I'll say here, display units thousands for every one of them. Makes it easier on the eyes, I think. Same for profit, also say K out here to indicate this is all in thousands of dollars. Okay. Next thing we're going to do here is I will go and annotate the label by clicking the ellipsis here by text to say state, make that state a little bigger, maybe a 12-point font or something. And then you can say, we'll annotate sales in front of sales, that above profit. And again, prefix the profit with the label profit, and see what it looks like in the background. I hit apply. What it looks like right now. It looks pretty good. Okay, so I'll hit OK. Now, as it stands right now, I want to point out a few things here. Not every state has got a name in it in the circle, or sales or profit. This is because Tableau is smart about the use of text. So click on label here. Notice how it says here, allow labels to overlap other marks is unchecked. If I check that, we'll get everything entered in that look very, very messy. So Tableau has made some smart choices here, automatically electing not to show text labels if they're going to spill over into other bubbles, for instance. Okay. Right now, these bubbles aren't sorted the way I'd like them to be sorted. I'd like them to be sorted in such a way that the biggest bubbles are in the middle, like it is in magazine covers. So we'll go to state here and sort them by, let's sort them by sales. Descending order of sales. And we'll see what that looks like. There you go. Okay, I like this much better. So the biggest states by sales are right in the middle as being your biggest circles. And you can see that they're green, so they're profitable. You can see the profit amount. You can see that Pennsylvania and Texas are losing you money. So are Ohio and Illinois. Washington isn't making you money, and so on and so forth. You can also, of course, modify the tooltip the way you'd like to. So here's the default tooltip format. You could edit this out to change the format if you'd like to. Right now, if you hover over, you're going to see the default tooltip. Okay. So let me put a little title for this chart. It's sales and profit by. We have it then. We have a set of another chart, a bubble chart created. Okay. So let me move along now, and let's go on to examining another interesting graph that is very similar to a bubble chart, but a little better as viewed by data visualization professionals. somehow rectangles are easier to compare than are circles. So that being said, straight lines are easiest to compare. We're really good at comparing one-dimensional things. In sort of like 2D things, length, width type things, we're not good at comparing circles, even less so, irregular shapes, even less so. But between circles and rectangles are better. So we can make an area map out of this graph we just created that would do a better job of, that'd be more interpretable. So to go to an area map is super simple from here. All I'm going to do is duplicate this sheet and we'll have an area chart coming out of it. And to make this an area chart, all I've got to do is make the mark type to be a square. There you have it. Now we have a area map, area chart, or area map that depicts different states based on the area they occupy in the area chart. Okay. So moving along, we're now going to look at a visualization that's well suited for examining relationships amongst variables. A very common thing we encounter is to examine if two variables are related or not. And we might talk about the relationship being a correlation or a certain regression on standardized coefficient, but to most people that's unintelligible. If you can show the data, somehow that lends more credibility to your supporting analysis. So let's try and do that, just that here. We're going to examine in our data whether customers who spend more get larger discounts. So let's go ahead now back to Tableau, and we'll construct here a scatter plot. Also overlay a regression on that. Right, so in our data, we have a variable called sales, and we got a variable called discount. Scatter plots only make sense if your data is continuous, preferably continuous, not discrete continuous, not discrete. So survey data tends to have discrete values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 7-point scale, and that doesn't look so good or compelling in a scatter plot. So I wouldn't recommend scatter plots. Just don't look that good with discrete continuous variables like survey scales. Spare that in mind. Okay, so we have your discount. I'm going to move discount over to columns and sales over to rows. Now, if you do something like this, Tableau will give you just one dot. You might be perplexed as to why is there just one dot in your kind of data. Well, the reason is very simple. For one thing, you have gone with the default level of aggregation, which is sum and some discount, some sales. More importantly, the data is aggregated. Let's first fix this aggregation to see if making an average makes a difference. We'll make both variables average, and now you still see that you've got sales and discount, but they're not sort of like, it's not a scatter plot. Oh well. You're kind of wondering now, how in the world do I disaggregate my data? Well, you need to think about how you want it disaggregated. Do you want your data disaggregated by what level? Because there are various levels of aggregation and disaggregation. You may get it down to the most smallest level, or maybe one level above that. I'm talking in cryptic language, I know. Every row in our data represents one transaction. Some customers have many transactions. So we can potentially aggregate to the customer level. Let's do that. A unique identifier for a customer is a customer name. Let's look for a customer name. Here's our customer name. So we'll drag customer name onto detail. Oh, by the way, just before we even do that, if you want to inspect a variable in Tableau, you can always right-click on right here on the variable and click describe. And it will show you like a snapshot of the variable. So this variable then has the names of 793 or so, customers, and they only show you a couple because they don't want to overload you with all the data. We'll use customer name to divvy up our data. So if you drag customer name on the detail, that means your level of detail is going to be customer name. Now, every dot represents a customer. Let's confirm that. You hover over a dot like this, it says that's Tom Ashbrook. Okay, good to know. Another thing you can do to confirm this is in fact customers, notice in the bottom left-hand corner, it says 793 marks. 1 mark for every one of our 793 customers. Now, we haven't used shape yet, but this is a good time to use shape because I don't like hollow circles. I don't know why they have a default hollow circles. I'm going to make that solid. Maybe even dial down the size of circles a little bit. They're a little too, they're overplotting, they're very crowded. Okay. And maybe even color them to be something like a grayish kind of color. So, okay, so now let's talk about some of the research question we might ask out here. So one question you could ask is, and I've purposely in this case use a provocative question. So, do customers who spend more get larger discounts? So it's up to you whether you want to have a descriptive kind of title or one that is a rhetorical. Rhetoricals tend to draw more attention, get people to examine your graphs. So it's something you should think about is in terms of how do you title your graphs. Here's one that is bound to draw people's attention. Now I need to be true to my title. The title is, do customers who spend more get larger discounts? So we're kind of hypothesizing here that spending is sort of like your independent variable. And so the norm is to put the independent variable in the x-axis, they depend on the y-axis. So let's flip this then. I can swap rows and columns by clicking on this little icon, or I can literally manually drag and drop them into different cells. I'm going to go with the swap option right now. It's easier to do so. Okay, so we can now see here, we've got a scattering of dots that is represented by, that is kind of has 2 axes holding it in place. Our average discount, which right now is in decimals, we'll make that to be a percentage, which is more meaningful. Let's say here, this is a percentage with no decimals. So there you have it. And we'll make the sales again to be in dollars. To be more meaningful to our readers. Now, you can look at this graph and kind of look to see there's a big clustering in the middle out here, big mess out here. We can maybe even dial the size down a little bit more so we have less overplotting going on. Overplotting happens when you've got points stacked one on top of the other. You can't tell how many points are stacked one on top of the other. So one solution is to just, reduce the size of dots so you have less of overplotting going on. Okay. Now we can also fit a regression line to convey here what is going on. As such, looking at the scatter plot, it's hard to tell if indeed, as sales go up, is there a trend upwards, or how the trend is very hard to tell here. So let's then rely on some analytics. We'll click on analytics here, and I'll drag in a regression line. Tableau calls a regression line a trend line. Get a linear trend line to come in here, drop that on the graph paper, and here it is. And all I can say is, ouch. This graph line is trending downwards instead of upwards or flat, telling me that, the more a customer spends on this superstore, the less of a discount they get. Clearly, loyalty doesn't, earn many brownie points in this particular store. We can learn more about the regression equation by looking at hovering over this line, or even hitting edit and describe red line, trend line. So just like in a software like SPSS, we can view here a regression equation and examine here things like a p-value. Our p-value is significant, telling me here that sales has a significant negative effect on discount. Something that the store should probably look into. I don't know if they're doing it by accident or they're aware of their poor treatment of their good customers. All right, so we have now constructed here a scatter plot with regression as well. Let's go on now to examining a line graph. So line graph is typically used to represent change over time. So you've got, a date variable and you got some things data changing over time. You want to show that. Your typical go-to is to show a trend line that changes over, or a line graph that changes over time. Here we have a sales trend being represented here. You have sales of different regions over time. Let's visit Tableau and construct this line graph next. So our goal here is to construct a line graph. The line graph is going to be constructed as follows. I'll drag sales over to our columns. Thinking about this. Actually, sales should be on rows. I think sales in rows makes more sense here. And the next thing I'm going to do is I need to find a variable to express the trend of sales over a time variable, date variable. Let's look for that. We're going to use order date here as our date variable to examine the trend of sales. Now, date is a date formatted variable. Dates are very powerful because dates have various properties to them. When I drop order date on here, Tableau will automatically assume one of the many properties of date. What Tableau has now assumed is that we are interested in using order date as a year variable and created a graph for us. If I click on the down arrow here, you can see the various forms date can take. Let me quickly discuss a few of these. Early on, I talked about how a dimension is, generally speaking, discrete. But a dimension can also be continuous. Let's see what that means. So as it stands right now, we have year shown out here. If I hover down, see year is already selected. What if I select month now? What would happen? Let's see. Oh, we get data that's broken down by month. Great. That seems an obvious thing to happen. Why am I surprised? Notice that month is a blue month. Again, you'd wonder, why is that even relevant? You'll see. Click on the down arrow again for the month pill. And now we'll look at the second kind of month. This is repetitive. Uh-oh. What was Tableau thinking? Well, they're smart people, so they knew what they were doing. You see the small note says May up here, and then down here says May 2015. This means that the one below contains month and year. The one below is the continuous version of date. You see, date can be rolled up by month, or you can have month-year combinations. Seeing is believing. Look at this, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Now you have date being represented out here as sort of like month, year. So you see monthly sales over a 4-year span. And the color of this pill is green. Let's go blue again. We'll go back up here and make this month to be blue. You'll now see the data is being rolled up by month, rolled up by month. So you got data for 4 years in January. Let's go back and make that to be month continuous. Okay, so we now have sales data for a 4-year span broken out by months. We then have what is going to be 4 times 12 or 48 marks. It says that in the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, so let's now go in, add some more nuance to our data. We're going to bring in a region pill out here. So we can break out our data by region also. So now we have our data broken out by, we got sales and we got sort of sales broken out by region. You can compare the trends across these 4 different regions. I think when you see year or month, it's kind of obvious. So we don't have to say month of order date. I'm going to delete that title completely. Reduce the amount of information we have on our chart. Furthermore, I'm going to go and make the sales thing also go away because I think that can be easily replaced with a label. So make this header go away. And you can always, if you wanted to, put sales onto the label. Sorry. We can put sales on the label, but I don't think we need to actually. Yeah, we don't, because this is all about sales over time anyway. So I think we're saying sales trend. We don't need to say it's sales over time. So simplify the sales trend and just leave it at that. I'll of course take region out of here. And there we have it. We have a sales trend. I'm going to change the color a little bit, maybe make it a different color. Big gray kind of color out here. And the grays are boring. The grays are less taxing on the eye. So, you know, less distracting colors are always better for the graph. So here we have a trend of sales over time, broken out by region. You might be wondering, why not put it in one graph? We could, but it might get spaghetti. Let's see what it looks like. So you always try these things out, drag region onto detail and see what it would look like. And so you get spaghetti now, right? And if you color differently, you get what I think is still spaghetti. It's colorful spaghetti now. So that doesn't lend itself well to interpretability. So I'm going to go back here 2 steps now. Here's what we have. That's our line graph for expressing data changing over time. On to our next graph then. This would be like our last one we're going to look at here. So a map can give geographical context and can easily help identify areas to focus on. And the beautiful thing about maps is it draws attention. It's, again, attention grabbing. People love to look at maps, and it really gets them interested in what's going on. So let's take a look at how we can do this with our data. We're going to go in and build a map out here. So, and a really question is like, I guess a research question we have here is what, where are we losing money, right? So let's get a map going. Now, let me now draw your attention to these generated fields. I already mentioned measure names, measure values are generated by Tableau, but so are latitude and longitude. Anytime it sees a geographic variable, it'll go out and fetch a shape file, which contains longitudes and latitudes for all the kind of the shape of the entire awkward, you know, state it might be. So if you're thinking about a state like Nebraska or Colorado, Utah, very clean horizontal borders, as opposed to Maryland, very jagged borders. Now, these shape files include all those jagged kind of boundaries of states, and so very, very kind of handy thing to use. Okay, so we have this information already collated by Tableau. All I got to do here is double-click state, and our map is going to generate. So as soon as I double-click state, you see longitude, latitude find themselves in the rows and columns shelves, and state undetailed. You can see the map of the United States because Tableau knows our state data contains states in the United States. Let's now color our data. We'll use profit, put profit on color, and we'll go and then use some coloring out here to appropriately represent profit and loss. We'll use red, green, white, and make the legend go away. There we have it. As simple as that. We have a simple map that shows us, in a sense, where are we losing money, where are we making money in the United States. So let's call our map, where are we losing money. provocative rhetorical title there. That's really going to get people, again, focusing on not the green, but the red here. Texas, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, we've got Tennessee out there losing some money. You can go in and, of course, make the tooltip a little bit more user-friendly out here. We'll go and make this tooltip to be, let's put profit in tooltip, make this to be in dollars. And so a tooltip now is going to state the profit in dollars. Insert the state name here. So state name and okay. And now when you hover over, I want to make sure that it's giving us numbers that are in dollars. All right, so you can kind of see out here how much money Texas is losing us in all these different periods. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this illustration. We've gone over a couple of different common charts that we can construct using Tableau, and they're listed below. When our work is done, it's not time to close this sheet, it's time to save our work. To save your work, what you want to be able to do is do File and then Save As. Okay, so when you do Save As, it's going to give you an option for something like this. Let me hide my menu here. Okay, so you're going to see your menu looking something like this, whatever that's in files. We're going to now say Save As Type and make that Tableau packaged workbook. Okay, so identify what folder you want to save in, but importantly, call it Tableau packaged workbook. And this is going to be your call this data visualization demo or something, right? And leave it at that. And that now is a Tableau packaged workbook with an extension .twbx. Okay, notice that's what it's called on top. Now, if I save this and ship it out to somebody else, they'll be able to open it just fine. Okay. One more thing to do. How do you save this to Tableau Public? Well, for one thing, to save to Tableau Public, you need to have a Tableau Public account. Do you have one? Tableau Desktop username password is not the same thing as a Tableau Public account. Now, you need to go to Tableau Public, make one account first. So I'll show you my account, and then you can create a similar account for yourself. It's a very standard sign-up process. So let me share my screen that has this view that you can use. So you'll go to Tableau Public. Again, just Google Tableau Public, arrive at this page, sign up. Okay. All right. That's how you get a Tableau Public account, which is not the same thing as Tableau Desktop account for downloading software. Now, when you're done, you've got a Tableau Public account, you can go back to your visualization and get ready to push it to the cloud. Wait a sec. Before you can do that, Tableau want to make sure that Tableau wants you to make sure your connection is extract. If it is live, Tableau will not push it to the cloud. Once you click extract, now it's an extract form. Now you can push this to the cloud. Your graphs, don't worry, will still look the same. You go to Server, Tableau Public, and say Save to Tableau Public. When you do that, it's going to ask you for your username password for Tableau Public. When you provide that information, it will then take you to Tableau Public. As soon as I said that, it's going to take me to Tableau Public and ask me, what do I want to save the file as? And that's it. It's saved, and it's gone to Tableau Public, or it's going there right now as we speak. Okay, in another window, I have Tableau Public opened up. That's what Tableau did. It kind of bounced me off to this web Tableau public page. Let's go over there. And here we are. Now in here is the visualization. We just saw this. Now, oops, you can even interact with it, which is kind of cool. We want to make sure that this is showing us the whole workbook, not just the page we were on. There's an option somewhere here to do that. The Tableau changed recently, make sure. So show all sheets. And if you want people to allow them to download a copy of this, you can allow them, that's fine. I'll leave that, that checked. And so now we have this chart on Tableau public. Okay. Alrighty. I hope this was helpful. So we've gone over basically what data visualizations are, examined some common charts, and I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you so much for joining me.